This program is provided by Universal Genesis.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are wrestling with one of the biggest, oldest, and frankly, heaviest concepts in all of human thought. Metaphysics.
Right. For centuries, this has been the search for the unchangeable, for the foundation of reality, the things that are true forever, everywhere.
The ultimate pursuit of permanence. But here's the problem, and it's what our sources really hammer home. This ancient mission is now crushing the discipline under its own weight.
It is. I mean, think about it. If cosmology, biology, and, information science are fundamentally changing our understanding of existence every single year.
How can philosophy possibly keep up? Especially when it's demanding these timeless, universal, eternal principles.
It's an impossible intellectual demand. It just can't work anymore.
And that's what we're diving into today. A truly revolutionary proposal that philosophy should, well, completely abandon that ancient quest.
It sounds radical, but the idea is to redefine metaphysics entirely, make it lightweight, dynamic, and annually updated.
Essentially, an abstract snapshot of world understanding. This is our mission for today. We're going to unpack why this shift is so necessary and how you even measure this new annual metaphysics.
And we have a fascinating methodology for that involving the Nobel Prizes.
Yes, and then we're going to look at the stunning sequential story this new definition tells about the years 2020 through 2025. This isn't just theory. It's a toolkit for understanding right now.
So let's start with why the old model is broken, why philosophy needs this radical change of mission.
Okay, let's unpack this. When we say traditional metaphysics, we're talking about that hunt for things that are universal.
Permanent.
And transcending time and space. If you find something truly metaphysical, it shouldn't matter if you discovered it in ancient Greece or in a lab next Tuesday.
And this demand for permanence, for an absolute truth that sits outside of time, well, that became philosophy's biggest burden.
And what's so fascinating in the sources is the historical context for this.
Exactly. This tradition, seeking absolute and permanent truth, was deeply tied to a specific monotheistic worldview that came much later, the belief in a single, eternal, unchanging God.
It naturally translated into a philosophical requirement for a singular, eternal, unchanging truth.
Right, but here's the surprising part. That wasn't the original intent.
You mean for figures like Aristotle?
Precisely. If you actually look at his work, he basically coined the term metaphysics. It was much closer to what we might call, a comprehensive memo.
A memo.
A memo summarizing the current achievements across all fields of knowledge. It was the best possible summary of what was understood at that time. It was never meant to be an eternal doctrine like Scripture.
So a Western philosophy just gave itself an impossible job description at some point. What were the specific burdens?
The sources list 3, and they're crippling. First, the requirement of absolute truth. No room for error, no room for evolution.
Which is completely at odds with science.
Completely. Which leads to the second burden, the need to define eternal principles. That makes philosophy fundamentally hostile to scientific progress, which is, inherently provisional. It's always updating.
Okay, and the
The
third?
requirement of completion, this idea that philosophy had to construct a full, consistent system or a godlike worldview that explains everything.
A total dead end in the face of modern complexity.
It's a Sisyphean task, so the new definition we're talking about. It removes all 3 of these crippling demands.
And I can see how liberating that would be.
Yes.
The source material offers this beautiful, really simple analogy to replace that weight. It actually came from a listener insight.
Oh, I love this one.
The suggestion that metaphysics should be like Japan's kanji of the year. A single character chosen annually to capture the rough impression, the vibe of that year.
And that analogy, capturing the essence of the moment, that's the whole key to this revolution.
So here it is, the formal redefinition from the sources. It's deceptively simple. Metaphysics. The abstract snapshot of world understanding for that specific time or year.
And that just changes the DNA of the field. It means the concept doesn't need to be absolute or universal.
It's expected to be updated annually.
Right. It responds dynamically to scientific breakthroughs, geopolitical shifts, you name it. It becomes a form of cultural summation at the highest possible level of abstraction.
What's really interesting here is how culturally specific this idea feels. This fluid, updatable style. It feels completely incompatible with traditional Western thought.
It is a radical break. The model aligns perfectly with what the source calls Asian philosophical fluidity, and it specifically points to Japanese tradition. Their thinking prioritizes flow, renewal, seasonality.
Over a fixed, universal essence.
Yes. They emphasize the concept of the meaningful interval between things, the mood of the moment.
So Western tradition seeks the permanent thing, and this new definition seeks the flow or the mood between the things.
Precisely. And this is an idea that really could never have emerged organically from the West because the Western tradition is so structurally dedicated to permanence. By embracing fluidity, metaphysics becomes instantly relevant again.
Okay, so we have the why to shed that burden of permanence,
Yeah.
and this annual abstract snapshot. Now, for the biggest challenge, the how. How do you actually do this?
Right. How do you gather all of global knowledge, from quantum physics to international relations, and distill it objectively into one abstract word every year?
Where do we even start when measuring the air of the world?
This is where the proposal gets, I think, really brilliant and practical. The sources introduce a highly workable objective metric.
Which is?
The annual metaphysics should be derived from the trends reflected in the 5 Nobel Prize categories. The source calls this the most reasonable and modern application of the concept.
Okay, but hold on. Nobel Prizes. They can be very specific, very siloed. Doesn't that risk just measuring institutional recognition rather than, fundamental reality?
That's a fair point, a valid skepticism. But the logic isn't about the specific winner. It's about the categories they represent. They provide a comprehensive structural map of human endeavor.
So the categories are like high-level indicators of the year's world abstract structure.
Exactly. Let's break them down.
Please.
Okay, so you start with physics, chemistry, and medicine. Together, these 3 symbolize the front lines of natural understanding.
They tell us how the world physically works, the new boundaries of life, matter, energy, the cosmos, what physical reality is doing.
Right. Then you jump to the human structures with economics. This symbolizes changes in social structure, how we're trying to manage ourselves, how societies are organizing through new market models or institutional designs.
Okay, that makes sense.
Next, you have the literature prize. This one is crucial. It symbolizes the core of human experience. It captures what humanity felt, what it feared, the dominant ethical questions of the year. It's the emotional barometer.
And finally, the Peace Prize. That represents the world's morality and political trends, conflict, cooperation, the state of our global ethical framework.
It's a really comprehensive picture when you put them all together.
But here's the key, the part that feels hardest. The act of abstraction. If the physics prize is about, say, quantum entanglement, and the literature prize is about post-colonial grief, how do those 2 completely different things become one word, like fragility?
That is the hardest part of the job. It is. It's about raising the level of observation. The source uses this great analogy of a forest.
Okay.
Imagine you have 5 different trees, an oak, a maple, a pine. The traditional scholar, the vertical one, studies the roots and leaves of one specific tree. But the new metaphysician, they fly high above the forest.
They're looking for the overarching pattern.
Exactly. They don't care about the species of the tree, they care about the condition of the forest. Are the trees growing dense and green, suggesting growth? Or are they brittle and falling down, suggesting collapse?
I see. So if the year's physics prize details the vulnerability of complex molecular systems,
And the literature prize explores the psychological fragility of a refugee.
and the economics prize details the brittleness of global supply chains, the common theme connecting all 3 is fragility. That's the snapshot.
Precisely. You abstract that common, overarching theme across all 5 fields, and you distill the yearly metaphysics, the abstract air, the mood of the world. It's light, it's grounded in data, and it's incredibly insightful.
Let's put this model to the test then. Let's look at the most turbulent recent history we have, the years 2020 through 2025. These abstract words are like a narrative guide to the modern era.
And the sequence tells an incredible sequential story of our contemporary experience. It moves from total chaos to a calculated prediction.
It starts, of course, with 2020, disruption. This wasn't just a bad year. It was the moment the world literally stopped and twisted. Scientific models, societal structures.
Everything from travel to education was just simultaneously interrupted. The global pause.
And that sense of interruption leads directly into 2021, fragility. The source suggests this was the year the shock of 2020 revealed the thinness of, well, everything.
The international order proved brittle, supply chains snapped, and the psychological vulnerability of our complex systems became painfully visible.
Then we moved to 2022, shockwaves. This isn't the initial hit, it's the chain reaction, the compounding crises.
Right, the impact of the Ukraine war, the energy crisis, inflation, it all spread globally, and this long-held assumption of stability in the global economy just vanished.
Then the tide turns, and it turns radically in 2023. Acceleration.
Yeah, this one is all about the explosive, sudden growth of generative AI and large language models. For the first time, it really felt like the pace of technological change was radically exceeding the human scale.
We were all just struggling to keep up.
And that speed leads us straight into 2024. Uncertainty. The argument is that future predictability became structurally difficult. The interplay of AI, geopolitics, and the economy made the future feel like this open, structurally unknown region.
And finally, we have the projection for 2025. Threshold. This isn't just a prediction, it's identified as an entry point into a new stage.
The idea is that the old era is definitively ending. The implications of AI, high-stakes climate issues, they're reaching a critical, unavoidable point. It's the boundary year. Crossing is mandatory.
When you look at that sequence disruption, fragility, shockwaves, acceleration, uncertainty, threshold, it's not a random list of words.
Not at all. It's a deep chronological narrative.
It really is.
It describes what the sources call the geological fault line of the 2020s. It moves logically from global collapse, the breaking of old systems, to the realization that a new beginning is necessary. It has to happen.
And the sources connect this to Heraclitus.
Yeah, the ancient idea that everything is in a constant state of flux of becoming. The old has to be destroyed or broken down to make way for the new structure. It's a perfect fit.
So we've completely redefined the discipline. But I can hear the skepticism. Isn't this just journalism? Why does summarizing the year's trends require a philosopher?
That's where we connect back to that listener insight about the high talent required. The sources insist this is now the most creative and most talented field because the job description is so unique.
If metaphysics is, as it's defined, the study of raising the level of abstraction across all disciplines, that requires an extremely rare skill set.
Right. Traditional scholars, as we said, are vertical. They drill deep into one field. They're experts in physics or literature or behavioral economics.
But the new metaphysician must be the person who can view everything from the air.
Their role is to unify and translate the languages of natural science, social science, information science, and the humanities. This ability to extract the unified metastructure from all that knowledge is what separates them from a specialist or a journalist.
And crucially, it's not about finding simple answers. It's about spotting complex patterns in global structures.
And that perspective is essential today because specialization has become so extreme. The intellectual field most lacking in modern academia is precisely this ability to synthesize.
We have thousands of people who can tell us about a single leaf, but almost no one who can accurately describe the condition of the forest.
That's the unifying talent that is so desperately missing. The source notes it requires an integration of skills. The skill of a poet to articulate the abstract mood, a scientist to understand the data, and a philosopher to see the structural connections.
What we've discussed today is nothing less than the reinvention of philosophy. By defining metaphysics as this annual abstract snapshot, you ground abstract thinking in real-world data, like the Nobel Prizes.
You make it light, practical, and highly relevant. It removes that impossible burden of eternal truth and makes philosophy a tool for understanding the present.
So if metaphysics is about extracting the true metastructure of reality, the defining spirit of the time, then the journey we've outlined is really just beginning.
And we've established that the current metaphysical focus for the coming year is the threshold. So the provocation for you, the listener, is this. If the old era is definitively ending, what specific structure in your own field or even in your own life needs to be fully crossed or abandoned to step across that threshold and embrace the new stage?
The intellectual journey into what comes next is ours to take. Thank you for sharing the sources and allowing us to take this deep dive into the future of philosophy.
Until next time.
This program is provided by Universal Genesis.